People who had a lot of questions and concerns about the future of their residency at Lincoln Estates showed up for traveling City Hall. We listened to those concerns for the better part of an hour and a half. And I just want to recap what's happened. We think we have a nice update for you today. We're not making any grand announcement, but we did promise an update, and that's what this is. So as a result of the questions and concerns that were presented to us, we asked people who were there to leave us, the mayor's office, their contact information. I believe we had 19 people that initially offered us that contact information. The following week, I met with Jeff Wilhite, who's the legal counsel for Lincoln Estates, as well as their management team, to get a sense of where this was going and how we had gotten to this point from their perspective. After meeting with them, I understood that two things had occurred, and this is not new news. This has all been out in previous updates, but I understood that no legal eviction notices had been filed at that point, and secondly, the management and ownership team was interested in working with residents on a case-by-case basis. So I came back to the office and called all of the folks who had left their contact information. I got a hold of all but three and just asked them to do two things. One, make sure they communicate, get in front of the management team at Lincoln Estates to tell their story. Don't wait around, and be honest with what your story is, because I believe that they are willing to work with you. And my second point to them was to reiterate that no legal eviction notices had been filed. So although some may thought they were going to be out on June 7th or June 8th, that in fact was not the case. So what we found out was there ended up being a great level of communication between the residents and the management team, and I think that has alleviated a lot of concerns. Perhaps not every concern, but certainly a lot of them. With that, I think I'd like to turn it over to Jeff Wilhite. We'll just kind of go through this chronologically. I met with Jeff. Jeff, again, is the legal counsel representing Lincoln Estates. At the traveling City Hall meeting, I said I would facilitate a meeting between Pastor Brooks and Councilwoman Robinson. We did that, and we're here to report back to the community as we promised we would. So, Jeff, you want to take it?
We'll give you an update. First, on behalf of Lincoln Estates, we really appreciate the mayor's trying to cause constructive dialogue. That's important to resolve all sorts of issues, and we appreciate that. Ultimately, though, it's really not a city matter technically. It's a matter between a landlord and leases and the residents. But we, knowing that it's a private matter, we still very much appreciate the discussions that the mayor has caused. And he really did cause a lot of discussions. His reaching out to people who were concerned caused a flood of activity at the property. It caused constant calls and visits to the office. People who had not been communicating with us communicated with us. And as we pledged, those who have reached out to us, who's pretty much every resident who had received a notice, we've worked with. And working with them means taking a breath and letting them try to find a place. We didn't pull any eviction triggers on June 7th or June 8th. And I'm proud to report that it's not only talking to people, but our staff at the property has actually gone out of their way to provide a lot of help, to really try to find places for people and give some assistance. And not so much now, because most of that work's over, but there were a few weeks there where our property staff was spending about 95% of their time simply trying to help people find places and move forward. So with that communication, let me give you an update on where we are now with residents at Lincoln Estates. So a lot of people were given notices that they had breached their leases, mostly for not paying rent. And a notice is just that. It's just a letter. It's nothing that legally says they have to move. The only way to get someone legally to move is to go to court and file an eviction. So the word eviction is something that's filed in court. And as of this moment, There still have been no evictions filed at all at Lincoln Estates, for Lincoln Estates. I'm the one who would do that, and I've not done that or been instructed to do that yet. Of the people who have received the notices, though, that they needed to find some place because they broke their leases with not paying rent mostly, almost all have since left. Almost all have successfully found someplace else to go. There are, as of this morning, only 9 residents left who had received notices who still remain at Lincoln Estates. Of the 9 residents who are still at Lincoln Estates who had received notices, 5 of those are almost out. They have found a place. We know the address. They're asking us for, another couple or a few days, and we're saying just fine. We know they're going. They're making plans. The communication that the mayor has encouraged is working, and so 5 of the 9 who remain, everything will be fine in a matter of probably just several days from now. So worst case, right now, it looks like there's maybe only 4 maximum who had received notices, who I'm not sure what's going on. One of those is unauthorized occupants. They didn't even sign a lease. They're just sort of squatters there. And the other 3 that might be left, all rent, and there's some communication, but not maybe enough productive communication. So worst case, what we think is great news, thanks to the communication, is there might be 3 or 4 that we're not sure what would happen, where we might have to do something later. But the vast majority, thanks to communication, including with what the mayor encouraged, we've worked things out with them.
Pastor, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think that we were a part of the group. We called for people to come to the mayor's traveling hall meeting to express their concerns about what was going on at Lincoln Estates. It was to bring to rise a discussion, a continuing discussion about concerns in terms of loss of affordable housing. We understand the deal was done, but we still had to deal with the people. There are poor people who live in our community. They found themselves in a very sad predicament, and morally and ethically we felt that it was necessary for us to ask them, as they were talking to me, to ask them to now go to the meeting and let's express it in this public forum, our concerns. And so I first and foremost, as a servant of faith in the community of Evansville, that I have enjoyed a good relationship with, and that's every mayor of this great city of ours. I've enjoyed a good relationship, and I'm glad that Mayor Lloyd Winnecke and the owners of Lincoln Estates were able to help those residents, and Lincoln Estates has gone beyond the call of duty, and I know at least one instance where we've received one of those residents, and not only did they pay her deposit, but they also purchased, I think, a washer and a dryer to help her in the transition. And so she was one of the seniors that lived in your development. And so I think you have to give people their flowers when they've done something well, and so we want to commend them for that. That may not be newsworthy, but in the circle of faith that I operate in, when people do some good things, we ought to acknowledge it, and so that's what we do. I also want to hope and pray that we continue to address the issue of affordable housing in our community, as well as some concerns about, and you hear this word gentrification and people get all alarmed by it, but I think if we face it, we can fix it. If we talk about it and we plan, then we can prevent it from becoming a greater issue and concern and problem in our community. What I also would like, since many of you have covered this, is to talk to you as well and give you some insight on the downtown market, since you need to know this. And that is, we applied for a grant with the Robert Johnson Foundation That did not go through, working with the Promise Zone individuals. But we now have partnered with ECHO, and we think that we are on our way to securing financing to reopen the store by fall. I think that's an important part. Lincoln Estates is across the street.
Definitely.
We are over there. We already have a nice development. There's Lincoln Elementary School there, and so it is important that we continue to be an important anchor in that community. On an aside, though, we also want to also acknowledge the fact that since that traveling hall meeting, Memorial Baptist Church, Memorial Community Development, and perhaps my own personal integrity have been attacked by some in the community, and you have received information about our operations and what have you, and what you need to know is every year we are monitored, we are audited, and we follow the letter of the law as it pertains to the operation of the Memorial Baptist Church and Memorial Community Development Corporation. There are no citations with our name on them at the HUD office. And so we want you to understand that. But we've been subjected to some things, and it's important because I think one of you may have even this morning went by my son's house to interview him about this impending issue tonight on this issue of conflict of interest that will be brought before City Council tonight. And this is what I want you to know. And that is that before my son lived there, or it was ever built, we had pre-qualified, we had filled out all of the forms that were required by HUD for us to fill out, including the conflict of interest forms. We many times have created the forms because of the limitations that sometimes exist within city government in terms of personnel and abilities. And so sometimes, because of our partnership with the city, we created the forms to make sure that not only the city stayed in compliance, but that we stayed in compliance. And so I want to be clear about that, because we're going to City Council tonight, and my name has been thrown out there. We've serviced over 5 employees with the city. We filled out conflict of interest forms, and we took those forms to the Public Works Board, and they were signed off of, and there was no big deal. The only difference this time is we've talked about gentrification, and we brought a group that had questions about the Lincoln Estates deal. That's all. And so we've been subjected to some things. But here's the greater scheme of things. We've been doing this community work for 24 years. We've endured some things. At the end of the day, and this is really what I want to say to our community, at the end of the day, it's all about the people. People whose houses we rehabilitate, people whose children we enlighten and educate, and people who live in our apartments, and the young people we counsel and employ. It is this simple reason that every day 100+ employees and volunteers serve the Memorial Village. As a result, thousands of lives have been impacted. With the issues we have, we've tried to be a part of the solution. We don't think folks ought to be attacking us when we're trying to make the community better. Now, there might be those who said, why would I bring this up at such a time as this? And am I committing political suicide? I don't think so. I think I'm simply speaking from my heart about the good work that Memorial and Memorial Community Development, in partnership with the mayor and others, has done, continues to do, with support of great folks like the city council person, Connie and others. And so I would ask that if the media has any further concerns that they would, one, honor the privacy of my son and his family and his children, and just come and see me about any policies. I have nothing to hide. I filed my taxes on time, and they're all current, including my property taxes that we all complain about because there's not a person in Evansville that doesn't. It's part of our DNA around here. That's what I have to say, and we will continue to do the positive things in this city that we've always done. And I'm sorry that some people have taken what we said so personal that they've now tried to attack us with so-called interpretation of policy. But we're above that. In the words of Michelle Obama, anybody goes low, we go high. That's what we do. Thank you.
Connie, would you like to say anything?
I just want to thank the community for coming together to support the people who live at Lincoln Estates. Without the town hall meeting and this being brought to the attention of the public, we would not have been able to solve this.
One of the issues that was brought up the night of the town hall meeting was what could be done from the city's perspective to potentially aid any of these residents who might face relocation. That night we discussed the Affordable Housing Trust Fund as one option. I would point out that there is an ordinance on the council tonight that to transfer $100,000 to that, but I would tell you that no residents that from Lincoln Estates have been forced to utilize or come to the city for any of these funds. But the fact of the matter is, we do think it's important, and this was on the path to going to the city council before the Lincoln Estates situation really came to light in the manner that it did. But the money is being appropriated to make sure we have funds available, as we've committed to other community organizations in the past, that we have funds available to help build and make affordable housing available. But we think it's important for the public to know, based on the discussions of that night, that none of that funding has been used, and at this time apparently will not need to be used.
But we would like to point out that it is very important that this city continues to place more value on people than we would on a pig ordinance.
With that, we'll be happy to take any questions.
Well, I talked with a lot of people over at Lincoln Estates at the few times that I've covered the story, and they were very, of course, concerned about, they said, listen, you know, I'm not one of those people on that list that maybe had some issues and was being asked to move out, but I am concerned about affordable housing and what happens here. You may have addressed this many times before, but I just wanted to ask again. You know, you said we kind of need to monitor that and be mindful of that. What can be done if future development does happen at Lincoln Estates to kind of update the property? And I know there's been no confirmation of rents going up there, but I heard a lot of that from residents that were concerned and never really got a for sure answer from management.
Well, I think you have to acknowledge if it's market rate, it's probably, the rents will probably go up at that particular property. It's very important that those of us who do affordable housing development continue to get support, and not just from the city, but from the state, from the federal government. In terms of developing new stock of affordable housing, you lost 108 units basically in that transition. So we've got to replace that 108 units for families who are paying over a third of their income in rent. So we've got to find creative ways. And I have kind of an aside said to the mayor a number of times, we've got all this innovation. I know you're innovative because you've done it. You were innovative with the hotel, you were innovative with the med school. I said, now get innovative, Mayor, with the affordable housing. So, you know, we got innovation. We find ways. Perhaps what we do is start to really kind of prevent, and he and I, we're going to talk more about this, but you got a long-winded preacher. So to prevent us from losing all of the affordable housing as other market forces take place, we may want to literally develop districts where we designate those particular areas so that as one area, so say for instance, Lincoln Estates is market rate, then perhaps we need to make sure that the property where Erie Homes used to be, we make sure that we designate that for affordable housing. Say someone develops some private developer comes in and develops a block of single-family residential homes on, we'll say, Gum, on one side. Then what prevents us from then strategically saying, okay, on this side, we need to make sure that there is affordable housing on that side. And don't be deceived when I say this. When we build single-family affordable homes, they look as good or better than some of the JAGO developments that you see. So we want people to understand that we're not talking about things that those of us in this room wouldn't live in. We're talking about comparable homes.
I think if you look at what Congregations Acting for Justice and Empowerment, CAGE, has brought to light in the last couple of years, there is a shortage of affordable housing in our community. And one of the ways we're starting to address that is by eliminating blight. We believe that once we eliminate neighborhoods of dilapidated homes, the value of the properties in those neighborhoods rise, and we hope that people will make investment in those neighborhoods and improve the quality. So we understand that there is a shortage, and it's a long-term play. We're not going to come in and fix affordable housing overnight. But to the pastor's point, I think if there is community collaboration, affordable housing is an issue that we can make some real inroads with.
Mr. Mayor, what do you think of the idea of affordable housing districts? I mean, blocking off some spots that would only, have some sort of limitation in terms of rent and what have you.
I'd have to think about that and see some specifics before I would say, yes, I like this, or no, I don't. I love to hear different ideas. Not every idea I hear I embrace, and maybe there's a variation of that that would work. I just don't know.
Let me give you an example of that. You wouldn't even know that you were in that area because of the wages and the economic landscape in our city. You wouldn't know the difference. You would literally look at that and say, wow, that's a neighborhood with some really nice homes for working class families. And so the designation would be a part of a development scheme, but in terms of the final product, you wouldn't know the difference.
Sandra Matthews, our Times newspaper. I'm sorry, I started late. Attorney, I'm sorry, I don't have your name.
Jeff Wilhite.
Mr. Wilhite, two questions. One is, you talk about market rate, but there's fair market rates, there are different market rates. Do you have an idea of how much the rents are going to be at Lincoln Estates now that your private has taken over? What are people looking at? I mean, they're throwing out $600, $900 a month and all this kind of thing, thinking that this is going to keep certain people out. My other question is, what is the purpose of all the additional security lighting and LCD lighting, that kind of LED lighting all over the place, and all the stone walls and all that kind of stuff? Could
Okay.
you speak to that?
Yeah, I can speak to both. I'll take them in order. In terms of rates, it's premature. As you all have seen, the focus now is on fixing up the property. And maybe I'll use this to first answer your second question. The law enforcement community, I don't speak for them, but I know many of them in the multifamily world, and Jeanette Benton Drive, unfortunately, connotes issues now. It's not been a safe property. It has some issues, like other properties do. It's not necessarily unique to them. But what you're seeing, Sandra, is definitely an effort to address safety and security. So the fact that it'll be a gated community with those walls, which will be painted and they'll look a little prettier than they are now, is to stop pedestrian traffic walking through, which is equated sometimes with activities that are harmful to a property. Same way with lighting. This property years ago had a crime study done by Kevin Corbin and Eric Krogman of the EPD's crime-free, multifamily crime-free program, and they recommended a lot of security be done, largely with lighting. That was not done. And so one of the first things that the property has done is to take the dust off of that report, and they're going to try to implement absolutely everything. And a large part of that is lighting. So they're very proud that once it's done at night, it's not going to be possible for someone to kind of sneak around and hide behind bushes and do the things that tend to increase activity at a property that's not safe for everyone. So you are right to perceive a lot of the initial renovation being geared to safety and security. In terms of rates, because the focus has been on fixing some habitability issues and safety and security, they're not yet at the point of being able to fully answer your question in terms of what the rates would be. I know some of the media have reported that in general in Evansville, those ranges of market rate might be $500 or $600 up to $800 or $900, and so that's not a crazy range. I represent most of the larger properties in town and can confirm that that's a range. But whether you would get those out of Lincoln Estates, no matter how much money is in it all of a sudden, it's really premature. I can attest that there's no necessarily certain vision other than for now fixing it up. There's some terrible situations in some units, the safety and security, that's been the focus, and then they'll start moving towards a marketing plan and seeing what it can hold. I'll also add that they intend to still keep Section 8 housing choice vouchers, and as a result, as many of you might know, there are some limits on market rates that can be charged. So at least for those units who might have some housing choice Section 8 voucher support, there would be some caps on market rates from that program.
And I also think, Sandra, not to try to answer for Mr. Wilhite, but I also think that people who come from other places with the notion that somehow our local demographic is the same as what they may have invested in before may have to bring those rates down to be competitive in this market. So I think that, as an outside investor, he may think that he's going to get more, but the reality is that this local market may bring those rates down.
Good point.
What was the rent at Lincoln Estates as it was?
I don't know. I should know that, but I don't know.
Do you have an idea?
I can follow up with and get it to you though.
No, sir, and I'm glad I don't, because some people thought that I had some control over Lincoln Estates, and I didn't. So I'm happy to report I don't know anything about their rent structure. Praise the Lord.
Okay, everybody, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.